When Donald Trump landed in Beijing in May 2026, the world watched a carefully choreographed spectacle unfold. Handshakes, banquets, measured speeches, and promises of stability. But behind the diplomatic imagery, something much larger was at stake. The silent collision between two powers economically dependent on one another, while simultaneously preparing for a century of strategic competition. That is exactly what today's article is about. Here at Café No Front, both on YouTube and on our Substack, the goal is straightforward: to explain geopolitics, war, economics, and power relations as living history, connecting current events to the deeper historical forces that truly shape the world. Every week, subscribers receive exclusive essays, strategic reports, and analyses on Substack. Then, the following week, one of those articles is adapted into an open-access video here on the channel, expanding the discussion and bringing this content to a wider audience. And all of that costs less than a cup of coffee per day over the course of a month. If you would like to support this work and gain full access to exclusive texts, reports, and content, the Substack link is available in the description. And before we begin, subscribe to the channel, activate notifications so you do not miss upcoming analyses, leave your thoughts in the comments, share this video, and follow Café No Front across all our social media platforms. That support directly helps the project grow and keeps this space independent. Now, let us understand what truly happened during the meeting between Trump and Xi Jinping, and why that visit to China may have revealed far more tensions than solutions.
I want to thank you very much. This has been an incredible...
When Donald Trump landed in Beijing on May 14th to 15th, 2026, the world watched with a mix of anticipation and skepticism. It was the first visit by a U.S. president to China in nearly a decade. Images showed firm handshakes, formal banquets, children waving flags, and a rare walk through the reserved gardens of Zongnanhai. Xi Jinping called the meeting a historic milestone. Trump declared they had solved problems others could not. Behind the diplomatic courtesy, however, a familiar pattern emerged. Symbolic gestures, modest commercial deals, and deep differences left untouched. What truly happened there cannot be reduced to official communiques or triumphant statements. It reflects the harsh realities of power in the 21st century. Two deeply intertwined economies, yet political systems and strategic visions that repel each other. China, with its manufacturing dominance and control over critical minerals, projected controlled confidence. The United States, pressured by the war in Iran and domestic electoral needs, sought quick and visible wins. The result was a tactical truce, not a strategic turning point. The summit took place at a delicate moment. The conflict in Iran, with its impact on the Strait of Hormuz, raised oil prices and created global uncertainties. Trump needed to show progress to calm markets and his political base. Xi, facing internal challenges of slower growth, wanted predictability to consolidate technological and industrial advances. Both leaders prioritized short-term stability over painful concessions. In the Chinese Foreign Ministry briefing, the tone was calm and repetitive. Cooperation for peace, stability of supply chains, Taiwan as an internal matter. There were no bombshell announcements or direct criticisms. On the American side, the readout emphasized Chinese purchases and rhetorical alignment on Iran. The discrepancy between the two readouts revealed what each side valued. Beijing sought the framing of strategic equality. Washington wanted concrete deals. The most tangible announcements revolved around aircraft and soybeans. China agreed to purchase 200 Boeing jets, with potential expansion to 750. For Boeing, this brought relief after years of drought in the Chinese market. Trump celebrated it as a victory for American workers. Analysts noted, however, that the number fell short of initial expectations of 500 units, and that official Chinese confirmations were cautious. Agriculture followed the same pattern. Commitments to purchase soybeans and other agricultural products worth billions of dollars were highlighted. This would benefit farmers in the American Midwest, a key political constituency. But observers recalled that similar promises in the Phase 1 agreement of 2020 had not always been fully fulfilled. A board of trade was created to monitor implementation, a sign of persistent mutual distrust. On critical minerals and rare earths, there were mentions of improved flows and the maintenance of pauses in export controls. China dominates this chain and uses it as leverage. No deep structural changes were announced. American companies would remain vulnerable to future disruptions. On the technology front, executives such as Jensen Huang of NVIDIA, Tim Cook, and Elon Musk participated in parallel meetings. There were signs of relief on some chip controls, but Beijing blocked advanced sales shortly after Trump's departure, showing the limits. From a broader economic perspective, the summit reduced the risk of immediate escalation. Markets reacted with moderate volatility, initial relief in technology and aviation stocks, but without euphoria. Oil prices rose amid uncertainties in Iran. The trade relationship gained temporary predictability, but structural barriers, residual tariffs, export controls, Chinese subsidies remained. Global companies would continue diversifying supply chains, accelerating friendshoring and nearshoring trends. International economists noted that China gained breathing room. Its growth, still dependent on manufacturing and exports, received a cushion. For the U.S., symbolic gains helped domestic narratives, but did not alter the long-term industrial imbalance. Economic interdependence persists, yet mutual trust remains low. Each side prepares scenarios for selective decoupling. Taiwan was the most sensitive topic. She reinforced that it is the most important issue and warned of conflict risks if mishandled. Trump mentioned listening to Chinese concerns about arms sales, but announced no changes. The American arms package to Taiwan, valued in billions, remains under consideration. The U.S. policy of strategic ambiguity continues, with practical support for Taipei. Militarily, the meeting produced no advances in crisis mechanisms or communication channels. Tensions in the South China Sea and joint exercises persist. China continues modernizing its forces with a focus on regional projection. The U.S. maintains a reinforced presence in the first island chain. Neither side yielded strategic ground. The deterrence balance remains fragile, dependent on capabilities and perceptions. International relations specialists observe that Beijing seeks time to consolidate technological and military advantages. Washington, with resources stretched by Iran, prioritizes risk management. The result is managed rivalry, not resolution. Informal guardrails exist, but depend on the leader's will. The Iran conflict loomed over the conversations. Both sides agreed that Iran should not have nuclear weapons, and that the Strait of Hormuz must remain open. Trump spoke of Chinese cooperation. Beijing emphasized diplomacy and peace without firm commitments to pressure Tehran. China remains a major buyer of Iranian oil. Recent U.S. sanctions targeted Chinese refineries, but practical impact was limited. This dynamic illustrates how regional conflicts entangle great powers. The war raised global energy costs, affecting supply chains and inflation. Neither Trump nor Xi wanted escalation that would harm their economies. The rhetorical agreement helped stabilize market expectations, but did not bring a ceasefire. China positioned itself as a responsible actor without alienating partners in the global South. American allies in Europe and Asia watched closely. Indo-Pacific countries such as Japan, South Korea, and Australia reinforced security partnerships with Washington, concerned about possible Taiwan trade-offs for economic concessions. In Europe, the focus was on implications for energy and trade. No one saw the summit as a game-changer, but rather as a signal that superpower rivalry would not collapse immediately. In China, state media highlighted hospitality, strategic equality, and a vision of constructive and stable strategic relations for the coming years. She projected control and long-term vision. For the domestic audience, it reinforced the narrative of peaceful rise and firmness on core issues. In the United States, Trump sold the meeting as a resounding success. Critics pointed to the lack of concrete deliverables and possible weakening on Taiwan. Independent analysts described it as a stalemate summit, pomp without breakthroughs. Markets and American companies valued predictability, but remained cautious. Diplomats and think tanks on both sides converged on a sober assessment. The summit bought time. It avoided acute deterioration. It did not resolve structural dilemmas. Technological competition, regional military balance, incompatible economic models, divergent visions of international order. As in previous meetings, management replaced solution. Looking ahead, the framework of constructive strategic stability serves as a rhetorical umbrella. It allows cooperation where interests converge, energy, climate, pandemics, while competition continues in technology, regional influence, and global norms. China invests in self-sufficiency and alternative partnerships. The U.S. strengthens alliances and domestic resilience. Economically, interdependence persists but with more friction. Companies navigate between opportunities and risks. Socially, in both countries, nationalist narratives shape public opinion. Militaries plan for conflict scenarios while leaders seek to avoid them. The risk of miscalculation remains real, especially over Taiwan or the seas. Globally, the summit reinforces a world of multipolarity managed by two main poles. Middle powers gain maneuvering space, diversifying partnerships. Multilateral institutions remain weakened. Issues such as Ukraine, North Korea, and climate change will require ad hoc coordination. Reflecting on the meeting, one thinks of how history records moments when great powers, despite deep rivalries, find formulas to coexist without catastrophe. Not out of friendship or ideological convergence, but cold calculation of costs. Trump and Xi personified different styles, one transactional and personal, the other institutional and visionary, but share pragmatism in the face of inescapable interdependence. The outcome was not transformative. It was human, imperfect, conditioned by internal and external limitations. It stabilized without resolving. It bought time in a world that cannot afford total ruptures. For attentive observers, this already says much about the character of the current era. Intense yet contained rivalry, bounded by economic and power realities. Months and years will tell whether this truce deepens or erodes under new pressures. For now, the Beijing meeting illustrates what is possible when leaders prioritize management over illusions of decisive victory. The Sino-American relationship remains the central axis of international politics, defined less by grand agreements than by the daily capacity to avoid the worst while preparing for competition. This dynamic will shape economies, military strategies, and the lives of billions. Understanding it requires looking beyond triumphant headlines or partisan criticism to the underlying structures of power, interest, and limitation that guide great powers. The May 2026 summit was one chapter in this long story, marked by courtesy, calculation, and continuity more than rupture.